Free agency, one of the most compelling and exciting times to be a sports fan. With any single move, teams can dramatically increase or decrease their championship window. We have seen major moves pay immediate dividends, like Tom Brady joining the Buccaneers, Peyton Manning joining the Broncos, and Drew Brees joining the Saints, just to name a few. In this video, I will discuss some of the top free agents and where I think they will land. Also, note that my decision ultimately came up to where I think the best fit would be, and where I think the player would like to play. Anything can change with more millions being offered, or unforeseen circumstances occurring. Furthermore, the possible teams category is a mixture of what I think and the betting odds attached to said player. Before we get into the players I will be discussing, I would appreciate if you could like and subscribe to the channel. More videos will be coming soon, so stay tuned. And with all that out of the way, let's check out my predictions. Starting off with free agent 1, we have Kirk Cousins, which, I'm pretty sure everyone in the league loves Kirk Cousins. And the possible teams I narrowed it down to were the Falcons, the Vikings, and the Raiders. There's a lot of talk that Kirk Cousins won't be re-signing and they will take a quarterback in the draft, but I'm not too sure. I think it's a strong possibility that he'll return. They have Justin Jefferson. I think their championship window can still be extended with further free agents, but Kirk Cousins is getting older. I believe at this point he's 35. He still had a great season last year before getting injured, and we don't honestly know if he'll be the same quarterback. But if you could still get 80% of what he was, that's a great starting quarterback that's around a top 12 to 15 quarterback. And obviously, let me make the case for the Falcons. The Falcons are picking at number 9 in this draft class, I believe. And I'm personally mocked them Dallas Turner, but it could definitely be a quarterback. JJ McCarthy could go to the Falcons. But I believe the Falcons are a good enough team to where if they get a quarterback, they could be a playoff team. Obviously, Desmond Ridder wasn't it. Taylor Heineke definitely wasn't it, and they've just had really struggling quarterback play ever since Matt Ryan left. The Falcons are a strong possibility, but I just personally can't see Kirk going to the Falcons. I think they want a younger quarterback to develop. So moving on to the Raiders. The Raiders are another strong possibility, but I honestly think the Raiders like Aiden O'Connell over there. He's a young quarterback with a good arm, and I think he could definitely develop in that system. He showed enough to where he could warrant possibly another season of starting, and the Raiders are starting their rebuild anyway, so I'm not exactly sure the Raiders are the best fit to get Kirk Cousins. I think Aiden O'Connell is going to be their starting quarterback next year, so let's see who I believe he will go to. And yeah, I think Kirk's staying on the Vikings. I genuinely don't see him going to another team. I know there's a bunch of free agency talk that he's going to the Falcons for sure, but I genuinely just don't see that. I think if you have Kirk with the weapons on that offense can be a top 5 unit easily. Obviously, they don't have the best offensive line, but you could fix that in the draft. It's a stacked draft. Defensively is where they start to fall apart. Now, I think personally, I'm pretty sure I mocked them Nate Wiggins out of Clemson, but we'll see how that goes. I just see Kirk staying with the Vikings. And yeah, let's move on to my next free agent, which is Russell Wilson. Now, he is a controversial figure in the NFL eyes. I remember when Kirk was with Seattle, everybody loved... Not Kirk. I remember when Russ was with Seattle, everybody loved the guy. Obviously now, ever since Broncos country, let's ride. Not a lot of people have liked him because they think he's kind of a cringe ball. And I like Russ. I don't think he's a bad quarterback. He played a lot better this year. And obviously, once you're under the tutelage of Sean Payton, that's a lot better than having Nathaniel Hackett, who cannot call plays to save his life. He can't control the clock, nothing. But this isn't a video about Nathaniel Hackett. Yeah, and the possible teams I think are the Steelers and Raiders. Obviously, there's no chance Russ is going back to the Broncos. They ate a massive dead cap penalty. I believe it was, $80 million almost? And yeah, I'll lay the cases out for both teams. Once again, for the Raiders, as I said, I think he could be a good fit. Just the same sentiment I have for Kirk Cousins. Because the Raiders are a needy quarterback team. But I still think they're going to stick it out with Aiden O'Connell personally. I just think he has enough tools and he showed enough promise, especially in that Chargers game, that he did warrant another year of starting. As for the Steelers, this is the most rumored team with Russ. He has the highest odds to go to this team, and I've seen so much to the point where I think the Steelers are a very strong possibility. Now you may ask, what happens to Kenny Pickett? Kenny Pickett was the 16th pick or 20th pick in the 2022 NFL draft. I honestly forgot. I was saying 2021. I know it's 2022. And obviously it hasn't worked out very good. His yards per attempt are towards the bottom of the league. And he just hasn't shown a ton of promise outside of clutch situations, which is kind of crazy. He has a lot of game-winning drives and just plays well in the clutch. I think Kenny Pickett could definitely develop in the future. But having someone like Russell Wilson to learn behind, who maybe isn't in his peak form, he definitely isn't. He's not as good as he was in Seattle, but I think he could come over and lead the Steelers to a 10-win season, and that's why I think he will be going to the Steelers. I think it's a good fit. I think under Mike Tomlin, they can have a successful season, and Kenny Pickett isn't necessarily out of the franchise quarterback discussion. I just think that he can sit behind Russ and start to learn, and maybe even develop into that franchise quarterback that you drafted him to be. Now, next is Saquon Barkley, and I know that transition was a little weird, but Saquon Barkley is my favorite running back in the NFL. He's just a monster. He's not the tallest guy. He's 220 something pounds, 230 almost. He's just an amazing mix of just size, weight, speed, power, everything. He's just one of the best running backs in the league, and he's just been stuck behind this terrible Giants offensive line. Obviously, they have good pieces, like Andrew Thomas is one of the best tackles in the NFL, but Saquon just hasn't been able to show off his true ability under such a terrible offense and terrible offensive line. And that's why I don't know if he's going to be heading back to the Giants, especially with how hesitant they've been to pay him. Obviously, every team in the NFL has been hesitant to pay their running backs. Almost every team. And I just don't think it's a strong possibility he's going back to the Giants, as much as that might hurt Giants fans. So, who are the other teams that I think? I think the Texans are a very strong possibility. They have a good amount of cap space. They have a young core to work around. They have a decent offensive line. And him, CJ Stroud, that can be a great receiving season for Saquon Barkley. I remember his rookie season, he had, I believe, 2,000 yards of total scrimmage and 700 receiving yards out of those. So I think under CJ Stroud, who does operate in an offense that does have a lot of short passing situations, I think Saquon could thrive in an offense like that. Obviously, maybe his yards per carry might go down a little bit, but I think Saquon overall would be really successful with the Texans. Now, this is the team I believe is rumored the most to get Saquon, which is the Chargers. I don't think the Chargers are re-signing Austin Eckler after an absolute fall-off season. I still like Austin Eckler. I think he can be a good running back, but I don't see him going back to the Chargers, especially after how much money he wants. And I believe Saquon's going to ask for around 10 to 12 million, which is a good contract for a running back. I can see the Chargers as a heavy possibility to get him, but I wanted to save this team for last because this is the most controversial, especially for Giants fans, being the Eagles. The Eagles and Giants obviously are absolute blood enemies, and the Eagles kind of just watch them every year. The Eagles are a good possibility, but I don't think they're going to put any money towards Saquon when they already have some massive contracts on the team. I think it's very likely that they just re-sign DeAndre Swift to a shorter deal, or keep Rashad Penny, who's a solid running back, on that offense. So who do I think he'll go to? I believe it'll be the Texans. The Texans have a good amount of cap space. They're a young team. I think he'd fit the offense very well. So yeah, I think it'd be a great offense for Saquon to join. Next is Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry just a couple years ago was the best unanimously running back in the NFL. Now, I say unanimously, but I was always a bigger CMC guy personally, just because Derrick Henry had so many rushes. He didn't really do much in the receiving game. He wasn't the best blocker, but if you just want the pure best running back in the league, that was easily That was easily Derrick Henry a couple years ago, and he's just a complete bruiser in the run game. I think the Ravens would be a great fit. Obviously, great offensive line, and they were the number one rushing team last year. Lamar Jackson with an even better rusher than Gus Edwards, than J.K. Dobbins, who can't stay healthy, unfortunately. I just think Derrick Henry would fit like a glove into this offense and add actually a better layer of power, because a lot of their running backs are built on speed. J.K. Dobbins is a very fast running back. Lamar Jackson, obviously, probably the fastest probably the fastest quarterback in the NFL. I meant no disrespect. I think Lamar's a great quarterback. And obviously the second team I have here is the Bears. The Bears could be a very sneaky good team next year. They just re-signed Jalen Johnson. I just don't think they've shown that they want to pay running backs. I think that's why David Montgomery left. He didn't get the contract he wanted. I don't see him going to the Bears personally. So I have him going to the Ravens. The Ravens with Derrick Henry could add so much to that offense. And yeah, I just think it's a great fit for Derrick Henry. And he'll absolutely alleviate some pressure for Lamar Jackson. And Lamar could probably end up with even more rushing yards with added dimensions to the offense. Next free agent is Josh Jacobs. And you see, the only team I have here is the Raiders, because I don't see him going anywhere else. I know, as I said earlier, the Giants were reluctant to pay Saquon. And a lot of these teams have been reluctant to pay these running backs. But I just think Josh Jacobs, he's 26 years old. He's coming off, I mean, not a great season, but before that, he was one of the best running backs in the NFL. And I just see the Raiders re-signing him. I don't think they want to lose so many pieces. They've already lost a lot of pieces. And I think he's going to be a part of their rebuild. Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley's our next free agent to discuss. And the only possible teams I have listed for him are the Jaguars and the Chiefs. Obviously, like, as a Chiefs fan, I would love Calvin Ridley on the team. I think he's a speedster. He's a great route runner. He just can add so much to an offense. He was a 1,000-yard receiver this past year, which it really didn't seem like it. He had so many underwhelming games, but he also had so many overwhelming games. He had good chemistry with Trevor Lawrence, and I just personally don't see the Chiefs going that route. Obviously, the Chiefs need another receiver. I don't know who that's going to be yet. I think they can target one in the draft. This can be potentially a generational wide receiver draft. I think they will probably end up with Adonai Mitchell, but the Chiefs just don't seem to be wanting to pay receivers that much. And I mean, it's paid dividends. They've won 2 Super Bowls in a row when they probably shouldn't have. Their receiving core wasn't great, and Patrick Mahomes was kind of just fighting for his life with the most drops in the NFL. But tangent aside, I think the Jaguars will end up getting Calvin Ridley again. You don't give up a second round pick for a guy you're probably just going to let walk a season later. And if they don't re-sign him, who's going to be their wide receiver 1 or 2, depending on what the depth chart is. I believe Calvin Ridley's wide receiver 1 right now, and he should be. He's a great receiver. So I think the Jags, just for what they gave up for him, and he's 29, 30 maybe. He's still a great receiver. Obviously, they didn't have the season they wanted. Trevor was playing injured, and I think next year they can bounce back and potentially be a Super Bowl contender. Danielle Hunter. Now, the possible teams I have listed for him is obviously the Vikings. They have a very strong possibility of re-signing him. He had a 16.5 sack year, was absolutely electric. And another team I have listed here, maybe isn't the most popular, is the Rams. And the Rams are in cap trouble, so I could see how they possibly wouldn't have a chance with him. But I think Danielle Hunter would probably want to go to a bigger market like LA. That's definitely a driving force for a lot of these free agents, so maybe the Rams wouldn't have to pay him as much to come over there. Lastly, I have the Chicago Bears, who I think have maybe the strongest possibility of signing him. They're a young team, they need pass rush, and obviously they got Montez Sweat from the Commanders last year. But Montez Sweat isn't all you need. You can never have too many pass rushers in today's NFL with how mobile quarterbacks are getting, with how creative quarterbacks are getting, and how good offensive tackles are getting. I mean, Joe Alt's coming out this year, Olu Fushanu. We're going to have such a stacked offensive line class too. This is just a great class in general. So I believe he will go to the Chicago Bears. I think they're going to offer him a massive contract, and he will sign. I believe he's only 28 or 29. So they have another 3-4 years of probably great production. Next free agent is Chris Jones, probably the best player on this list. He's one of the best defensive players in the NFL. He maybe should have won Super Bowl MVP. Personally, I think it should have been Trent McDuffie, but Patrick Mahomes ended up winning it. 400 yards of offense, multiple touchdowns. I mean, fair enough. And the possible teams I have for him are the Lions, which I could see. They have some cap room they could fit him in. And this isn't the strongest possibility, but I think Chris Jones, if he would want to leave, would want to go to another winning culture. And Dan Campbell's obviously going to attract some free agents. the Titans, which is probably the least likely out of these free agent teams. I just don't see him going to the Titans, but they're gonna have some cap room freed, and him paired up with Jeffrey Simmons would just be electric. That defense would probably turn around pretty mightily. And obviously the last team I have here is the Chiefs. I don't think this should be really a shock. I think he's gonna go to the Chiefs. I mean, he's kind of making his agent probably fight for his life, because on Twitter he kind of just revealed already that he just wants to re-sign with the Chiefs, which you are not supposed to do as an NFL player if you want to get the max amount of money. So Chris Jones probably won't get paid as much, but I think he's a team-friendly player. He seems like he really wants to stay in KC, and he's gotten 3 Super Bowl rings out of it. So yeah, why not? Why not take a smaller contract, stay with the Chiefs, and win more Super Bowls? Lastly, I have Kendall Fuller. Probably not the biggest name on this list, obviously, and he's just a good cornerback. I think he could fit in as a CB1 or 2 on pretty much any team, and the Raiders are a strong possibility to sign him. I think the Raiders really need help on the secondary, from safety to cornerback, and Kendall Fuller could play that slot role. He could play overhang defender. He could do a lot for a team, and he's a physical hitter. The Colts, who will probably lose Kenny Moore in free agency, could definitely sign Kendall Fuller as a band-aid, maybe a 1 or 2 year contract. And with Kendall Fuller, you're not only getting a great cornerback for a year or 2, you're also getting someone who can mentor your younger cornerbacks, who can help develop these receivers that you're drafting. And obviously the last team I have for him is the Commanders, which I can also see as well, but I just don't see the Commanders re-signing him. I think they want to go younger and start their rebuild with Drake May. So who did I end up going with? I went with the Raiders, who can absolutely use help on their secondary, as I stated, and I just think he'd be a great fit in that defense. So yeah, this was my free agency video. If you guys liked it, please slap the like button, as I said earlier, and subscribe to the channel. I'm sorry if this isn't the most comprehensive or detailed description of these free agents. I just have a lot more fun free flowing my videos. I think I get a lot more content out of that, and I think it's more enjoyable to watch that way, personally. But if you guys like the video, then check out my channel some more, comment on the video, and yeah, peace out. See you later.